We need to talk about what's coming out of the Epstein files right now, and I'm telling you, the mainstream media is burying this story as fast as they possibly can. They don't want you to see the connections. They don't want you to understand how deep this goes. They don't want you to know who's really in those documents, but I'm going to tell you everything, and by the time we're done here, you're going to understand exactly why the establishment is in full panic mode. Let's start with John Phelan. Now, if you don't know who John Phelan is, let me introduce you. He's President Trump's nominee for Secretary of the Navy. Secretary of the Navy. One of the most important positions in our military. The person responsible for overseeing the entire United States Naval Force, our aircraft carriers, our submarines, our Marine Corps. This is a position that has traditionally been held by people with extensive military experience, people who understand naval operations, people who've dedicated their lives to national defense. So who is John Phelan? He's an art collector. That's right, an art collector with zero military experience. Now, I'm not saying civilians can't serve in these positions. We've had civilian service secretaries before, but usually they have some relevant background, some understanding of defense policy, some experience in government or military affairs. But Phelan, his claim to fame is his art collection and his parties, and not just any parties. We're talking about parties at his mansion, which reportedly features a mirrored floor. Think about that for a second. A mirrored floor. What kind of parties do you think require a mirrored floor? Now, some people will say I'm being unfair, that I'm making assumptions about someone's character based on their interior decorating choices. And maybe I am. Maybe there's a perfectly innocent explanation for why someone would install mirrors on their floor. But here's what's not innocent. Here's what's not a matter of taste or speculation. John Phelan's name appears in the flight logs of Jeffrey Epstein's private jet, the Lolita Express. Let me say that again because I want to make sure everyone hears this clearly. The man President Trump has nominated to be Secretary of the Navy flew on Jeffrey Epstein's plane, the same plane that flew underage girls to Epstein's private island, the same plane that's been at the center of one of the biggest sex trafficking scandals in American history. Now, does that automatically mean Phelan did something wrong? No. Not everyone who flew on that plane was part of Epstein's criminal activities. Some people flew on it for legitimate business reasons before they knew what Epstein was really doing. I'll give him that much benefit of the doubt. But here's my question. In 2026, with everything we know about Epstein, with all the scrutiny around anyone connected to that network, why would President Trump nominate someone whose name appears in those flight logs? Why would you put yourself in that position? Why would you give your enemies that ammunition? Unless there's something else going on here, unless the connections run deeper than we're being told, unless this is part of a pattern. And that brings me to Congressman Jamie Raskin. Now, like I said before, I don't agree with Raskin on much. He's as progressive as they come. He led Trump's second impeachment. We're on opposite sides of almost every issue. But what he's saying right now, what he saw when he went to the Department of Justice to review the unredacted Epstein files, that demands attention regardless of who's saying it. Raskin went to DOJ headquarters. He sat down with the raw, unredacted documents, the files that haven't been blacked out for public release. The files that contain all the names, all the details, all the evidence that the public isn't being allowed to see. And what did he find? According to Raskin, Donald Trump's name appears in those files thousands of times. Not dozens, not hundreds, thousands. Now, Trump's defenders will immediately say, of course his name appears a lot. He's Donald Trump. He's been one of the most famous people in America for 40 years. He was in New York social circles where Epstein operated. It doesn't mean anything. And you know what? That could be true. Epstein cultivated relationships with famous, powerful people. Having your name in his files doesn't automatically mean you did anything wrong. Trump has publicly said he knew Epstein socially, that they were both part of the Palm Beach scene. but that he banned Epstein from Mar-a-Lago when he learned about inappropriate behavior. But thousands of times. Thousands. What does that mean? What's the context? What are those references about? We don't know because the DOJ won't let the public see the unredacted files. And according to Raskin, there's something even more disturbing. Evidence that names have been removed from documents. Not redacted with black bars. Removed. Deleted. As if they were never there. Think about what that implies. Someone has gone into these files and scrubbed names. Someone has deliberately altered evidence in what's supposed to be a federal investigation. That's not protecting privacy. That's not following procedure. That's tampering with evidence. That's obstruction of justice. And who has the power to do that? Who has the authority to go into DOJ files and start deleting names? This isn't some low-level clerk making a mistake. This is systematic. This is intentional. This is coming from the top. But wait, it gets worse, because it's not just Trump. It's not just Phelan. The network is bigger than that. Howard Lutnick, Secretary of Commerce, member of Trump's cabinet. His name is in the Epstein materials too. We talked about this earlier, the emails between Lutnick and Elon Musk about visiting Epstein's island. Despite public denials of any contact with Epstein, there's documentary evidence placing him in that orbit. And Elon Musk, the richest man in the world, the guy who owns X, who's been given unprecedented access to government through this DOGE, Department of Government Efficiency nonsense, his name comes up too. Now, I want to be clear about something. I'm not saying all of these people participated in Epstein's crimes. I'm not saying they all knew what was happening. Some of them might have just been wealthy people who crossed paths with another wealthy person in the same social circles. But here's what I am saying. There's a pattern here. There's a network of powerful people currently serving in the highest levels of government, whose names keep appearing in connection with Jeffrey Epstein. And instead of transparency, instead of full disclosure, instead of letting the American people see the evidence and make up their own minds, we're getting cover-ups, redactions, and deleted names. Why? What are they hiding? What are they so afraid the American people will find out? And then there's the Brad Karp situation, which might be the most brazen example of corruption we've seen yet. Brad Karp is the chairman of Paul Weiss, one of the most prestigious law firms in America. Big firm, powerful clients, the kind of place where the elite go when they need the best legal representation money can buy. According to reports, the White House, the Trump White House, threatened this firm. Threatened them with what? We don't know exactly. But the threats were apparently serious enough that Karp caved. He agreed to provide $40 million in free legal services to the administration. $40 million. That's not a small favor. That's not a goodwill gesture. That's a massive transfer of value from a private law firm to a presidential administration. And it's happening because of threats from the White House. Let me put this in perspective. If this was reported about any other administration, if this was Biden or Obama or anyone else, it would be the biggest scandal in Washington. The idea that the White House is threatening private law firms and extracting tens of millions of dollars in free services, that's textbook corruption. That's the kind of thing we expect to see in banana republics, not in the United States of America. But here's why it matters in the context of the Epstein files. Who do you think Paul Weiss represents? Who do you think might need $40 million worth of legal protection right now? Could it be people whose names are in those Epstein documents? Could it be people who are desperate to keep certain information from becoming public? Connect the dots, folks. We have a White House that's threatening law firms. We have a DOJ that's redacting and deleting names from Epstein files. We have Trump nominees whose names appear in Epstein's flight logs. We have cabinet members whose emails reference Epstein's island. We have congressional testimony about Trump's name appearing thousands of times in unredacted documents. This isn't a series of coincidences. This is a pattern. This is a coordinated effort to bury information, to protect powerful people, to make sure the American public never learns the full truth about who was involved in Epstein's network. And you know what the really scary part is? They're getting away with it. The mainstream media is barely covering this. The few outlets that are reporting on it are being dismissed as partisan or biased. Congress is complaining, but not actually doing anything substantial with their subpoena power. And the DOJ, the institution that's supposed to be pursuing justice, is actively participating in the cover-up. I want to go back to John Phelan for a minute because his nomination really crystallizes everything that's wrong here. You have a man with no military experience being nominated to run the Navy. That alone is questionable. But then you find out his name is in Epstein's flight logs, and instead of withdrawing the nomination, instead of finding someone less controversial, the administration is pushing forward. What does that tell you? It tells you that either Trump doesn't care about the Epstein connections, or worse, he's confident that the system is so corrupted, that the cover-up is so complete, that it doesn't matter. He can nominate whoever he wants, regardless of their baggage, because nothing's going to come out. The files are redacted, the names are deleted, the DOJ is cooperating, the law firms are being threatened into silence. They're untouchable. That's the message. We're above the law. We can do whatever we want, and there's nothing you can do about it. Now, some of you are probably thinking, this sounds partisan. This sounds like you're just attacking Trump because you don't like him politically. And I understand that reaction. I get it. In today's climate, everything gets filtered through a partisan lens. But this isn't about politics. This isn't about Republican versus Democrat. This isn't about policy disagreements or political philosophy. This is about children who were trafficked. This is about a sex abuse network that operated for years. This is about powerful people who enabled it, participated in it, or looked the other way. This is about justice, and justice doesn't have a political party. Justice doesn't care if you're Republican or Democrat, conservative or liberal. Justice is supposed to be blind. Justice is supposed to apply equally to everyone. But that's not what we're seeing here. What we're seeing is a two-tiered system where if you're powerful enough, if you're connected enough, if you're wealthy enough, you get protected. The DOJ redacts your name, evidence gets deleted, law firms get threatened into providing free defense. Nominations go through despite obvious red flags. Meanwhile, if you're a victim, if you came forward to report abuse, you get ignored. Law enforcement doesn't follow up. Your calls go unreturned. Your trauma doesn't matter because the people who hurt you are too important, too protected, too connected. That's not justice. That's not America. That's not what we're supposed to stand for. Jamie Raskin saw those unredacted files. He knows what's in them. He knows whose names appear and how many times. He knows what evidence has been removed. And he's trying to tell the American people, but nobody wants to listen because it's politically inconvenient. The same thing happened with the Hunter Biden laptop story. The media buried it because it was inconvenient before an election. The same thing happened with COVID origins. Anyone who suggested it might have come from a lab was dismissed as a conspiracy theorist, until suddenly it became acceptable to discuss. The pattern is always the same. Inconvenient truths get suppressed, dismissed, buried. And by the time the truth finally comes out, it's too late. The damage is done. The powerful people are protected. And everyone just moves on to the next scandal. But we can't move on from this one. This is too important. This is about kids. This is about sex trafficking. This is about a network of powerful predators who thought they were above the law. And you know what? They were right. They are above the law. Because the law is protecting them. Every name that's been redacted, that's the law protecting someone. Every name that's been deleted, that's the law protecting someone. Every victim who reported abuse and never heard back, that's the law failing someone. Every threat against a law firm to keep them quiet, that's the law being weaponized. The system isn't broken. The system is working exactly as designed. It's designed to protect the powerful at the expense of everyone else. It's designed to ensure that there are two sets of rules, One for them and one for us. And John Phelan's nomination is just the latest example. A man whose name appears in Epstein's flight logs is about to be confirmed as Secretary of the Navy. Not because he's qualified, not because he's the best person for the job, but because the people in power don't care, because they know the truth is buried deep enough that it won't matter. $40 million in free legal services, thousands of mentions of Trump's name in the files, deleted evidence, redacted names, cabinet members with Epstein connections, and not a single person held accountable beyond Ghislaine Maxwell, who's sitting in prison refusing to talk while cutting deals with prosecutors. This is the cover-up of the century, and it's happening right in front of our eyes. The question is, are we going to let them get away with it?